Hello everyone, good morning. I'm Satya Shokar from University of Education and I'm pleased to host this webinar series on educational issues, barriers and facilities. And I hope you will respect the protocols of this webinar by keep muting your mic and the camera, and you can use the chat box for question. You can make the comments as well. And let me introduce with you Dr. Nadia Siddiqui. Dr. Nadia, very warm welcome, Dr. Nadia, and thank you so much for being here with us. Dr. Nadia is working as associate professor in education at Durham University, UK. She is leading British Academy projects, and one of the projects is based examining the role of school in early childhood years of learning. She has worked on annual status of education research, ASER, data of the intake and results from the schools in Pakistan. She is author of the several peer-reviewed journals and articles on research method, evaluations of school-based interventions, and equity in education. She has excellent credential being a researcher. So thank you so much, Dr. Nadia, for joining us, and you can explain about yourself a little bit to the audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you for asking me to come on this platform from University of Education, Lahore. And I believe it's something that really is an important place to discuss issues of education. And I believe the university, I think Pakistan is the only place where we have a university of education. Usually this is like department of education or school of education or faculty of education. So it's a very interesting thing to see that we have education as a university. We take it more seriously than the others. Just a little bit of my background. Did my studies in higher education until postgraduate in Pakistan. All my schooling was in Pakistan, and I did my masters there and did some work there as well for schools, for universities, taught in universities as well. Did some work in higher education for a short while, and then I came to England for a PhD. And after completing PhD, I got some opportunity to stay here and work further in the area of experiments in education. So that was an interesting time when the government of UK was investing a lot of money in an organization which was particularly established to fund experiments in education. So how it came there is there's a long history, and a little bit I will talk about it today as well, that what made them to have a specific unit to just do randomized control trial, quasi experiment, systematic review in education, because these are strong designs. These are gold. This randomized control trial in education is the gold standard, considered as a gold standard research design, and what claims we can make from experiments are causal claims, such as what works in education, what works in school, and does certain policy has given the same outcomes that it has claimed, and whether certain programs are giving us the same level or same amount of I think there is some distortion. I think, is there any mic on? If you can, yeah. So I think that's an interesting time when I got this opportunity to work with that organization, and did very early uh, RCTs that were basically, yeah. So So there is just like some of them are here. If you can see, these are my latest publications, selected publications. I am also on Twitter, and I would say if you find any, if you think of any question regarding this presentation, please do not hesitate to contact me and follow me on Twitter. And I do post lots of things there, retweet relevant education related matters in England and in Pakistan and in India. So basically, you can see the first of my publication is about randomized control trials. And my question here was, can teachers do that randomized control trial? Means usually it's an evaluator or an independent evaluation body who conducts the trial, while teachers and students or parents are just playing their role in that process of experimentation. So my question in that study was, okay, let's give control to teachers, and let's see if teachers can take part in experimentation, if teachers can take part in research, how will that help them to get to the findings, or how it can help them to use evidence. So today I'm going to talk about a little bit about evidence, but before I go further into details of it, I did a little survey of around about 300 people who participated in this survey study, and they were all teachers in Pakistan. And I asked them this question. So, as a teacher, this is like a statement there, and I asked them to give two options, either select I do not prefer this option, or I prefer this option. So, the option was, as a teacher, I should not be expected to spend time in doing research for my teaching. I would prefer to improve teaching lesson plans and materials which have already been strictly used. This can save my time, allowing me to just focus on my students' learning experience, which is a fair thing to do as a teacher. You are not being paid to do research. You are not being paid to conduct deep down studies, how your students are learning or reading articles. So, as a teacher, you are paid to do teaching, to manage students, to increase their increase their learning capacity and improve their learning experiences. So this is simple percentage level bar graph, and most people said that do not prefer this. They want to be engaged with research. However, we can say around about 29% have said, yeah, I would prefer to have structured lesson plan, structured material which have already been tested. I don't want to spend my time in doing this research. The other question was, as a teacher, I should have freedom and access to research resources for developing teaching lessons. I would prefer to look at a wide variety of research evidence and be able to conduct my own classroom research. This will help me in developing research skills and in publishing. So a lot of teachers have said, yes, I would prefer to have that liberty and freedom to make my own lesson plans and follow the evidence route rather than the choice route, or the what head teachers want them to teach to students. So they wanted that kind of a freedom and liberty to create their own lesson plans. So I was quite amazed by these responses in seeing that teachers in Pakistan are aware, at least those who took part in my survey. They wanted to develop that sense of research. They wanted to develop their best teaching practice by using the evidence. So why evidence? I would say, going back to the history of where this is coming from, why we are becoming so concerned about what works and what doesn't work. In England and in America, these are developed countries. They have invested a lot in education. The basic challenges of education have been crossed over. The main barrier, bring everybody in school. has been achieved in these developed countries, and to some extent that's one of the reasons of their development. All children in developed countries go to school. However, in our country, our basic challenge is a large number of children are still not enrolled in school, and many of them, a large proportion of those who get enrollment, they drop out in the first 1 to 2 years of attending school. So we have high dropout rate and number one, there is low enrollment, and then there is high dropout at the same time. So in terms of challenges, this is one of the challenges we have in Pakistan. In developed countries, or I would say as in England, their challenge is how to narrow the gap between children who are the gap of attainment, children coming from poorer backgrounds and children coming from a rich background or a middle class background. Their attainment gap is very wide, in a sense that you can pretty much predict that children coming from a poor household will never be able to get to university stage, because they will never get that level of qualification or grades to go further or get entrance into higher education. So that wide gap is so big that some of the commentators say that it will take around about 100 years to narrow that gap. So in our country, we haven't gone to that stage of measuring that gap, because the gap is yeah, poor children perform low as compared to children coming from rich background, or those children who are in posh private schools. These gaps are exist, but the real problem, this is the secondary problem we have. The real problem we have is children not in school. So government in the UK and in America, they were really interested in narrowing the gap, especially the international assessment like PISA. So it's an international assessment, and they test children in secondary school after every 5 years and see whether what children are learning in their secondary school, and they compare across the country. So when that comparison is created, you can see how children are performing in America, or how children are performing in UK, or what children are performing in Canada. These are developed, and you can see that very highly developed countries are performing low as compared to some Scandinavian countries like Finland, Denmark, Sweden. They are doing very well in education, and there are different explanations to why they are doing better than America or England. England and America are quite like down below in narrowing that gap. Especially America has a wide gap between children who are coming from poorer background, and they perform really low. So and there are different reasons to it. There are policy level issues. There are when children start their schooling, what kind of education they receive, and then political issues such as in America, it's high level of segregation between black minority, which is a big minority as compared to the white majority. So there is that segregation, clustering of children in school is it could be one of the reasons, and that we see in England as well. Children from poorer backgrounds are clustered in school. So when they are clustered in school, they have less opportunity to learn from that kind of resources that children bring in classroom when they come from a richer background. So these challenges were there, and then nothing, no policy seemed to be working. And Tony Blair government started saying, no, we want to work. What works is what matters. That was his aim, or that was his slogan of his policy. And then it moved on. It came to the level where what works is what matters, means we need to know what works. We need to know in a way, not at a soft research way, but we need to know in a rigorous way what things work in education, and what kind of outcomes we expect when children go to school or when they finish their schooling. So slowly and gradually that organization was developed, funded by government, and then they started sponsoring experimentation in schools. And then I have participated in many evaluation teams and worked with them. So moving on to what kind of evidence we need. So according to simple dictionary level, evidence is it's just body of facts, data.
Nadia,
Yeah.
can I just interrupt? Would you like to share your slides with us?
Yeah. Okay. Have I not been sharing? Okay. Let me. Okay.
No. Yeah.
Okay. I will go back and share. Okay. Share. Can you share this now? Can you see my slides?
No.
No?
No.
No. Okay, I'll try one more time. Stop sharing. And what about this? Can you see the slides now?
Yeah.
Okay. So okay. Can you see the slides now, Sadia?
Yes, Nadia, it's
Okay.
okay. Thank you. Please go
So
ahead.
simple. I think you missed. Did you see these graphs I showed you?
Nadia.
Yes. Okay. So I will go back to this later. Let's move on to a simple definition of what evidence is: any information, body of facts that indicate that a belief or proposition is true or not true. In criminal law and justice, like cases, facts such as fingerprints, documents, testimonies, experiences are counted as evidence. So this is basically data. So in education, we have the opportunity of having lot of data. As soon as the school starts, the first thing is register, attendance. What is that? That's data. Then moving on to the next, test scores, what each monthly tests, what children are performing, that's data. Then how many children are in from poorer background and how many children are from rich background. Teachers know these things very clearly. If there is no administrative data, that's like just anecdotal data. So in education, we are very lucky to have different kinds of data sets. um, at national level, we are, I think in Pakistan, they are like digitizing the data for children's schools and teachers nowadays, which is a very good thing happen, and it really pushes the agenda of better education. Once you have administrative data, a high quality digitized data which is accessible to teachers, which is accessible to researchers, a lot of information can be used for improvement outcomes. So the second is, in education, any form of information which is from schools or teachers, it's counted as evidence. So the next is, evidence is based on raw data, like attendance is a raw data. How many girls and boys are in your class is a raw data, and which is structured. So first is raw data, and then we structure it, we process it, synthesize it in response to a question or a proposition. For example, my proposition could be girls perform better than boys. So how would I know? I will use the raw data of their test scores and then analyze it, structure it, process it through analysis, and find answer to these questions. So data alone, without any context of inquiry or research question or hypothesis or a theory, cannot be counted as evidence. So if there is a lot of data available, for example, a matriculation exam, that data is available. It's what are you going to use it for? So it, depending on your nature of inquiry and research question, evidence can be used for policy making. It can be used for classroom level learning improvement outcomes, and so. In other words, what counts as evidence depends on what is being asked. So whatever your research question is, we can use that data to inform us. Evidence is why we need that. What's the purpose? So the purpose of having an evidence is to generate is to generate a purpose of reducing uncertainty in the process of decision making. A lot of things that teachers do on their daily basis is making decisions, or head teachers do. They what kind of curriculum will be taught in school, what kind of policies will be implemented in school, how will we interact with parents, what kind of textbook we are going to use for school. These are things that are decision based elements. And what evidence does is reduce the uncertainty. What is good for a child? If the evidence has a high level of certainty, then that evidence is considered to be the good. So in case of high risks where small decisions can affect lives of several individuals, evidence-based decision can yield the expected outcome. So consider the situation we are in now in the current times, such as coronavirus. So if there is some vaccine that comes out in the market and there is not a robust experimentation based on it, or there is not a strong trial done for that for that vaccine, it will be really harmful for individuals to take that vaccine. In Unfortunately, in education, the problem is that nobody dies of bad policies. Nobody dies with bad interventions if they are in education. So we are less concerned. However, the effect of policies in education affect generations. If they don't kill, okay, they don't kill, but they take a lot of effect on children's life. It has an impact on their opportunities in life. So what we do in education on daily basis, or what politicians do on daily basis, policy making, implementing, so these things have to be evidence based. Otherwise it could be harmful. Which they think is good, it's not good, it could be harmful. So the evidence could vary in forms. That's the why we are not taking up evidence in Pakistan. That's I think is the reason. The quality and the trustworthiness is very, very poor. The nature of results available we have, it's very limited number of research studies in Pakistan. Number one, we do not have administrative education data. We have school level data, but it's not of high quality, and it's only for state schools, government schools. It's not rigorously. School census don't take place for private schools so rigidly as one can imagine. I think school census have taken about 8 years ago, and I don't know what they are doing now, but that data needs to be revised on yearly basis so that it can be used for better policy making. So this means means the evidence is just judged on the basis of research questions and the quality. The other point about is the quality of evidence. It has to be large scale. It should have strong, valid measures. It should be complete and reliable. The purpose of any form of evidence is to reduce uncertainty. Uncertainty about what teachers are doing in classroom and what kind of policies are brought in school. Each minute of a child's life depends on what we are doing with them. In as long as they are in the school, we are responsible for anything that happens. So what is it? Because we are going to select programs, we are going to select provisions which we think are important. No, we don't. That's not the way forward. The best way to implement strategies in classroom is based on evidence. So it is very unlikely in social sciences that it will the uncertainty will be zero. Means like you are perfectly sure this program or this learning intervention will work. There will be some level of uncertainty, but the thing is, we will go at that. This is an example, and there is just one research question, but it has been answered in 4 types of research design. So the question was, does the school type for example, is a private school or a government school in Pakistan, let's say, so, or it's an academy or it's a tuition center, does the type of school determine children's academic attainment? So, for example, if it's a private school, does that does it mean that they will, if my child is in private school, they will do better? Is that this is a researchable inquiry, and a lot of has been written about it. So these three kinds of studies have been discussed and conducted, and we will see what is the evidence. Does it have high certainty, uncertainty, or medium uncertainty, or low uncertainty? So in a study, students were observed and interviewed in a school and found that children were very good at reading. So that's like a very descriptive research. Somebody has gone into the school and they have talked with students and they interviewed students without any sampling, without any comparison group. So, and they found that, oh, that's a very good school. It's a private school. And the conclusion was, if it's a private school, then it is a very good school. That's what they claim. But in terms of evidence, it's highly uncertain. Why it is uncertain claim? Because there is no comparison, there is no sampling, there is just very soft research. And then let's take an example next is, in a study all schools were counted, means it's a school level data, and they found the average school scores were reported in, let's say, English, maths, or science, and children in one school type A, let's say it's a government school, were not performing as well as children in another school type, which is also a government school. So but these two government schools were their English, maths, and science scores were compared, and this kind of study, and they found that one school was better than the other. So there is comparison here, but uncertainty is, it's not as bad as in the previous study. There is comparison, there is some data, there is some claim which is based on comparison, so it's a medium level uncertainty. The third type would be, all school type were found to have trees in the school garden. So A type had, means let's say it's a private school, and that was a very good school. They had a lovely garden and they had lots of trees. And in school B, there were no trees in gardens, and you looked at it, and then the claim was, okay, type A school is a good school because it has a lovely playground. So does it mean that it will affect the children? It will affect children's academic attainment? We can attribute anything to this cause. We can say yes, trees are the effect of the cause is the trees, the effect is the attainment. So that's not a good evidence. It's high uncertainty is very high in this claim. That this is a kind of a study collected on all school types, private or government. All data was collected from children and found that once poverty and family background are taken into account, means we know that number one, we have that information, and then we are synthesizing it, controlling that information, and then take it, and then we are analyzing it, and what say it says are taken into account, and then it does not show any difference in children's attainment. So once you know children's background, such as they are coming from a rich background or a poor background, and then you control it, so it doesn't matter whether a child goes to the government school or the private school. So this is why it is low uncertainty, because it's all full national level data, because it's high quality data, it's administrative data, so the uncertainty is low in this scenario. Here is an example of research that I have done with a colleague here, and what we found: poverty and attainment score in the on the cross plot C. So on how would I say, on vertical axis, you are seeing these are the scores. So 200, 220, these are scores equivalent to metric exams. Okay, these are metric exam total scores, and on the horizontal axis you will see children who have lived in poverty, children who are from poorer backgrounds, how long their poverty have affected them. So what we did is that my colleague Stephen Gorard and I, we did that together. For each child, we counted the number of years they were on free school meal. So what happens in the UK, which is a beautiful policy, they have been implemented since means mid 19 how would say 1948 is the implementation of giving children a regular meal in school, which has never been implemented in schools of Pakistan. Even today, children go to school and they take their lunch or they buy food from canteen, and children from poor background don't even eat. Or children who have struggling background, or there are circumstances at home are not right. Parents are not really careful about children's need. When they go to school, the midday they are hungry. Sometimes they don't even have breakfast. Children don't like breakfast anyway. So all day they live their life in school life. It is lot of hunger in school. In England, what they do is that all schools get one for each child, especially coming from a poor background. They check the household income. Local authority check, or school make those checks, and for each child the government provides funding to the school to buy lunch for them. The new changes in that policy is that they are giving money to the school not only for buying lunch, provide free lunch to the child, but also giving more money to the school to buy interventions or buy things that the child is missing at home, such as a child does not have um, the child does not have access to books, storybooks at home. So the schools are given money to provide those storybooks to the child so that they have some learning material. So in this, what we did is for each child, we counted the number of years they lived in poverty. So zero means there are children who have never lived in poverty, and two means the children, all children, not some sample, but all children in England in the government school, what they call state school. So 2 years means they have lived in poverty or as a free school meal child for 2 years. Four means they have lived in as a free school meal child. The household was poor for 4 years and the child was dependent on for free school meal. And you can see that there is a pattern there. So this is the evidence, and I'm focused on the quality of evidence and the synthesis of evidence. So we brought all that information together, counted number of years for it for a child, and just plotted, simple plotting it on the graph. And you can see children who have lived longest on poverty. 10 years means their whole school life was lived as a free school meal child. Their score, and look, compare it with the one who have never lived in poverty. That's the attainment gap which they are trying to solve through evidence, through doing something, that what can we do for this child who has always lived in poor household, and the whole school experience was not as nice as for the children who have never lived in poverty. So their resources were limited. The household had lots of challenges to overcome. So after completing school, it's very less likely that the child would continue study or go into a market, in a job market, or the opportunities will be less for that child. So the governments are investing a lot what to do with it, and what kind of interventions that can boost learning for these children. This is for Pakistan, and this is Acer data, and I have done this simple analysis of their information on household indicators and fail and pass on their test. So children who would likely to be failing and who would likely be passing depending on this information about their background. So on left side, you see children who are not enrolled in school, and blue bar is telling that they are failing in the test. So they conduct this test of little reading, writing, literacy, numeracy test, simple test. And on the right side, you see private school. children in private school are passing more than failing. So this is our challenge in Pakistan, that those who have the means, those who go to private school, they are likely to get a pass in a test. Their learning is better than anybody in maybe it's not attributable to school. It's not because they go to private school. It's because they have means to enter into an environment which has more resources and which has more opportunities, as compared to children who never go to school. If you take their test, they will fail. And the second risk factor, I call it, is being in madrasa. So being in madrasa, children are more likely to fail in simple test of literacy and numeracy. So on your left side, these are all indicators of risk: having no electricity, parents without education, no television. And it doesn't mean that television is the reason they are not learning, or the learning is not having a children TV means that they will not learn. So it's an indicator. It's the poverty indicator, that it's a resource which tells what kind of family is in it. So these are the risk factors, and you can see there is a pattern that moves up and up. And you can see that by the time it goes to the extreme right, these are having a television, or those who are enrolled in school, and those who can, their household can use SMS, they are more likely to pass simple literacy numeracy. So we haven't got a clear fail and pass. We have got more clear fails in not enrolled in school, but we haven't got, even private school children are failing in this simple test. So this is an interesting evidence, and we need developing policy. This can help teachers. If a child comes in a school, and having that background information about child, where that child has gone, what kind of parents they had, you can make little bit of decisions, and you can provide the kind of learning need, you can fulfill the need for that child depending on that information, depending on that evidence. Here is another example of schools, popular schools. Some schools are oversubscribed, and I have seen that in Pakistan as well. And some schools are not very popular. Means depending, and it could be government schools. Some government, getting a place in government school in Pakistan, in some regions in city, you can't get in there because they are all already oversubscribed. So this is an example here of studies, and you can see um, oversubscribed school in Durham, where I am, or you can replace this word. These are examples. You can say Lahore, means private school. Some going into Beacon House School is sometimes a real struggle. They take tests, they take interviews, and then there are high fees you have to pay there. So some schools are oversubscribed, and their screening process is involved, whether a child can pay, the parents can pay the school, whether a child has tests, whether the child can pass the test or not. But then in state schools, you can't get test. It's open for public, as in Pakistan, or in any country. State school is anywhere you go, and it's free of cost, and it's free entrance. So our oversubscribed school in Durham different in their intake of people as compared with non oversubscribed school. So popular schools are. Is there a difference if I send my child to an oversubscribed school by making everything possible? Does it mean that they will come to this to my expected learning outcomes? So that's the question. And a survey study conducted on a few parents, asking parents, and let's say Lahore, found that the nearest school location is most preferred choice of parents for their child's first primary school. So claiming that distance is the reason, claiming that what parents think, oh, if a school is near my house, then it means that that that's the intake of children. It depends on where the location of the school is. That's a high certainty. Let's go to the lowest uncertainty. So a study collected information on all schools in, let's say, Lahore, including children's background data, and found that schools in the urban part of Lahore have lower proportion of poor children. So urban Lahore center have more richer families, and that's like FSM is free school meal child. So let's say we don't have free school meal child, we can ask questions related to it. It could be, do you have a mobile or do you have a car? How do you get to school? Do you pay fees? These could be our indicators. So as compared to rural part of Lahore, and you can see that oversubscribed schools are mainly in the urban part of the city. So is it's slightly lower uncertainty. We can say that intake of school, where that school is, it depends. If it's an urban environment, then they're likely to be more, intake will be more rich class parents or working parents who go to office or school, or the mothers are working, parents are working. It's more like an urban environment. So the kind of urban environment will have an impact on what kind of home child lives in. So there will be a difference in as compared to rural settings. So all these things are dependent on the kind of research questions we are asking, what research design, what comparison groups, urban versus rural, poor versus richer, and the reliability of data as well, how we have collected that data. This is an interesting study, again based on evidence of the data that is national level data. What we are saying here is children who have disability and their month of birth, or in which month, if that means if you are in education, you will know that children who are they start school early in the academic year, they are younger. For example, in each cohort in a nursery class, you all children will not be of the same age. अगर आपकी क्लास नर्सरी है या ईयर 1 ग्रुप है, उसमें सब बच्चों की एक एज नहीं होगी. कुछ बच्चे जनवरी में पैदा होंगे, कुछ दिसंबर में पैदा होंगे. डिपेंडिंग आप बच्चे की एज क्या है. जो यंग बच्चे हैं जिनका स्टार्ट अर्ली है, एकेडमिक ईयर अगर जनवरी से शुरू हो रहा है, एंड इफ दे आर स्टार्टिंग फ्रॉम जनवरी, but there are children who were born in let's say December. So पिछले साल के दिसंबर वाले बच्चे इस जनवरी वाली क्लास में आएंगे, तो they will be older. So this is what we did. Month of birth is a big controversy. It's not a controversy. It's a big attainment gap. Children who are younger in their class, जो क्लास में अपनी एज में छोटे होते हैं, their learning is also affected by their age. So what we did, whether in England, school year starts from September. So those children who are born near to the September, जैसे अगस्त, जुलाई और जून, वो उनकी एज वो मंथ में कम होते हैं. अगर 120 मंथ्स का बच्चा है, तो वो शायद 117 116 month के हो, वो 120 month के नहीं होंगे. So what we did is we plotted this, and we saw so month of birth or disability, they were two things. So children, जब बच्चे स्कूल जाते हैं with these kind of challenges, teachers label them. And if a child is not doing well, they will say, oh no, this child has disability. They will not see other background reasons. They will not go into the details of why this child is performing low. So what will happen is they will label the child as a disabled child, or children who need extra learning, who need extra support. And as compared to the official statement, or looking at doctor's data or GP, or going into getting a statement of whether my child or parents को लेके मेरे बच्चे को उसने statement दे दिया that he needs learning support. And when doctors ask, or the psychologist or the counselor ask these questions, there's no, your child is fine. It is just that they are young in age as compared to other children in class. So teacher hasn't realized that. So in this graph, you will see that more children who are more likely to be born in summer, June, July, August, they are more likely to be having a statement. They are more likely to be getting that statement of being disabled or not performing well, and as compared to those children who are born in September. So this is again simple data of plotting data in which month of what is the month of birth, and children who are born in summer are likely to be disadvantaged because of this natural thing. So I have written a blog in Urdu as well for teachers. I don't know whether teachers have seen that, but I tried to reach out to the teachers from Alif Elan group, and a lot of teachers responded back to say and say, yeah, I can see that in my classroom, some children are low in learning, not because they don't have ability, but they are young. Their mind is not as developed as compared to other children in classroom. So, and they are slow, their attention span, their focus is not as good as other children because they are young in age. So by looking at this data, again, we can make a lot of policies how we can support children in classroom, those who are young in age. Not that teachers need to know. Number one, teachers need data. And then the second thing is teachers need high quality evidence of what can we do with that group. And do they need extra teaching support? Do they need extra hours? Do they need late start to come to school? Do they need to be separated from the rest of the class? So these kind of interventions we need to make, and we need to make them based on high quality data. This is another longitudinal study that I have done, and simple is it's a cohort, and it's I wish in Pakistan we could do a study like that. So they selected 16,000 children in their secondary school when they were age 13. 13 years, secondary means teenage, beginning of teenage. And the question they wanted to see how this time period determines their future, or their chances of going into higher education, chances of going into labor market, what kind of jobs they, how this time period has an effect. And it's a crucial time period in a child's life, and transition and pupils transition from school to post compulsory education such as university education or college education. These were the questions they wanted. They wanted pupils' attitude to school when they are in teenage. What happens? Do they like going to school? What are their aspirations for going to university or college? What type of household composition? What kind of house is this? Is it a joint family? Is it a migrated family? Is it single parent family? Is it a family where parents are not working and they are dependent on state benefits? हमारे यहाँ स्टेट बेनिफिट्स की एग्जांपल जैसे एहसास प्रोग्राम, बेनजीर इनकम सपोर्ट प्रोग्राम है. ये नेशनल लेवल इम्प्लीमेंटेशन तो नहीं है, बट दीज आर द एग्जांपल्स हियर in Pakistan. Parental attitudes and aspirations for young people, for example, what they collected that information for 8 continuous years from 2013 to onwards until 20, I think, I can't remember what's the end of it, but there were 8 waves you can see on the right side. Wave 1 was the beginning 2013, and the deep information from the child, from the parents, from teachers, and linked it to national scores. जो मैट्रिक के एग्जाम है उसके साथ भी इनको कॉलेज के एग्जाम, कौन कॉलेज में गया है कौन नहीं गया, they linked it. And एक इंटरेस्टिंग चीज जो उसमें सामने आई कि इस तरह की स्टडी करना is not an easy thing. It takes a lot of time and there is a high dropout. So what I found here is the dropout rate means that's normal for longitudinal studies, that people leave studies, and it has an effect on the findings. So what I'm point making here is कि बहुत सारी स्टडीज हैं उनमें हाउस होल्ड इनकम के घर की में कितनी कितनी इनकम है उस घर की, ऐसा लगता है कि इनकम बढ़ रही है, लेकिन इनकम बढ़ नहीं रही होती. उसमें बहुत सारा जो पार्टिसिपेंट्स है in that study, they started dropping out, and we find that those who drop out are not a random group. it's a group who are disadvantaged, so they are likely to leave the study earlier than the other. So if we are making claims from this study, for example, हम सिर्फ एक साल का डेटा लेते हैं, वेव 8 का डेटा लेते हैं, and then we find that these students have all of them have gone into higher education, or large majority have gone into university, and we don't take into account that who have dropped out over a period of time. The students who were dropping out were more less likely to go into university. तो ये चीज हमने देखनी है कि एविडेंस कितना स्ट्रांग है, हाउ द फैक्ट्स दैट वी हैव सेलेक्टेड इन आवर स्टडी, हाउ गुड दे आर, and what claims we are making. This is an experiment which an aggregated trials, means they were around about 12 schools, and in each school teachers did a trial of a program which is called Fresh Start, so teaching English through phonics, and teaching English through phonics for 22 weeks. So what they did, and it's an accelerated reader, and a fresh, two programs were trial in school. FS is Fresh Start, AR is accelerated reader, and the purpose of these intervention is to improve reading outcomes, and especially for children who come from poorer backgrounds, from disadvantaged backgrounds, or from free school meal status, having free school meal status. And we designed this study as an efficacy trial, means just checking whether these two interventions, Fresh Start teaching by phonics and accelerated reader teaching through giving them books and quizzing on books, these two interesting worldwide intervention, and have been evaluated for many years. So this was done in England, and 22 weeks we implemented them in schools and on a randomized samples. Actually, teachers did that. Teachers, we just help teachers to conduct the trials in their classrooms, and they delivered the programs. They delivered how phonics will be done, what teachers will do, how which students they will do, which students will be in control group, and they did. And then the pre and post test, obviously before randomization a test was taken, randomization of children in treatment, and randomization of treatment and control. We did that randomization, and teachers conducted the program and conducted the tests and the program implementation, and we analyzed the data. We recorded attendance as well. So participant observation in teacher training sessions, this was additional data, and we observed 24 sessions of actual intervention when they were. This is again a lot of data in experiments, and face-to-face interviews from staff and 20 students, and we did field work, and these were the results. So Fresh Start is the treatment group. 215 students were randomized, and the other group was controlled. They were not given any treatment. So before pre-test, we see this is not a balanced group, because children in 20 control group were slightly achieving more than children in Fresh Start. So this, ideally in a randomized control trial, they should be very close at the pre-test level, but we can see that they are not ideally very close. However, we conducted the post-test after the intervention, and the gain score is on the 28 and 17 is the gain score for these two groups, and you can see children in the treatment group have gained a lot, gained 28 points extra as compared to control, who gained 17 points extra. And the effect size is just like dividing this with the total standard deviation, and this is 0.24. And what does that mean? It means if you see other studies which have got this kind of effect, you can see that it's around about 3 months of improvement. That child has learned extra in that program, which is equivalent to their 3 months outcome in 22 weeks. So accelerated reader, again, we did not have a pre-test here. We just had post-test. And we see that those who were in accelerated reader, their points were 327, and those who were controlled, they were not, they were 315. And the effect size again was 0.24 plus is the gain, so they gained extra as a result of this intervention. Here is a P4C study. A lot, we can see a lot of the, not P4C only, there's a lot of studies that are interventions, and they have been evaluated across the world through experimentation and the high quality evidence we collected about them. And the white ones are the ones which are showing positive results, and you can see the effect size. And the second column, the third column is effect on children from preschool meal, effect on children who are poor, and the quality of evidence, that means the sample, the experimental groups, the independence of test, what's the quality. And you can see the white ones are the one which 4 star is the highest quality. Some of them are very poor. Last one is 1 star. And you can see, if you read this trial, you will find what's the problem. And look at the last column, how it means what's the cost of these interventions per pupil, per child, how much would it cost. And see, some of them are very cheap, 20 pounds per child, it's 30 pounds per child. But some of them are very expensive, such as a summer school. Taking extra classes in summer school for children from poor background was the most expensive. So I will stop here and let you ask me questions if you have any. I will stop sharing. Please open your mics, and if you want, you can open your camera as well.
Well, Dr. Nadia, we have one question from Dr. Zakarullah
Yeah.
Sakto, and
Oh,
he is
yes, I know Zafarullah. I know Zafarullah. I can't hear. I can't hear
I,
you.
yeah. Okay, Nadia, I can put his question for you. Is
Yes.
political instability responsible for these critical conditions of education in Pakistan?
Um, I think political instability might be the reason, but investment in education is has been the lowest priority of most of the governments. It has been changing. To be honest, if I see, it's changing a lot in Pakistan, especially in Punjab. There have been a lot of policy making that's been done recently, and you can see things on the surface. Previously, these policies were not the focus of most of the governments, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe because we were not ready. We are not saying that we are as developed as England is, or America is. The thing is, in the history of nations, we are coming to that level. We are coming to that level of maturity where our policy making will be focused on education, and we can see that it's happening. Education is on the agenda at the moment. Like since the Sustainable Development Goals and Millennium Development Goals have come in on the surface, there is a lot of push from United Nations, from agencies such as those who give aid to Pakistan to make improvement. They are really pushing hard. What are the outcomes? So if we have been giving money to this country as in aid, and we can't see any real concrete outcomes, what are the reasons behind it? So they have slowly and started pushing the developing countries to show performance. And I think there are, unless our governments take that thing seriously, and I think they are taking it seriously now. Uh, but at the national level, I think it will take time. So yes, political instability could be the reason. But if we are politically unstable, we should not let politicians compromise on policies. We should not let, if there is one education policy, bring everybody on this on the table and let's discuss. So no matter whether your government stays in the next 2 years or not. Do not compromise on investment in education, and do not compromise, do not change the policy. Always boost the policy or improve the policy, but don't change it. But actually, the policy making in Pakistan is a little bit slower, especially in case of education. We are not doing it on daily basis, or we are not investing a lot in education, and especially overcoming hunger and poverty. Schools can play a very important role. Um, Overcoming the challenge of stunted growth in Pakistan. Why don't they provide meal in school? Why don't it in India? They have rolled out a national level school meal program, and that's very popular there, and it's been implemented, and it's showing its success on attendance rate. It's showing its a success on learning outcomes. So I think that's a policy. So whether Modi government stays there or not, I think that policy would continue. So I think we should do something like that in Pakistan.
Okay, Dr. Nadia, according to your own views, what sort of evidence-based research studies do we need to conduct in the context of Pakistan to just improve the quality of educational research? So, what are your views?
So I would say one thing we should continue, we should, whatever the research questions are, we should, focusing on that research questions, we should design studies. But what I would say that if the interest is causal claims, we want to see whether something works or not, we should do some randomized controlled trials. PhD students should take RCTs or experimental studies for their research projects. A lot of experiments, then when we do reviews of studies, they are not done by academic staff members, they are not done by governments, they are done by PhD students, because they have 3 years or 5 years, 3 to 5 years of time period to continue working with schools and building that relationship. So they have this 3 years is a very good time to complete an experiment in school. And I think if we should encourage more PhD students to take experiments for their thesis, large, not small in experiments like 10 students and 20 students. So do ambitious studies, do large scale data survey studies. And recently, I evaluated a thesis recently from Pakistan, and somewhere in a very big city, one of the biggest cities in Pakistan, and the size was only 3 schools. And I was so disappointed. How come that in a big city like Karachi, how come you not get more schools to take part in your study? So that's one of the things that make your studies large scale, bring more data, and if possible, then university colleagues should come together and develop a cohort study and collect sample of 20,000 students, or in Sindh or in Punjab or Balochistan, and do a cohort study each year, collect that data systematically, use PhD students, use research assistants, and invest in research, because what we find from research is very valuable, and it's totally different. The findings can tell you very different story as compared to what you believe. So I believe, I would say large scale design based studies and ambitious research projects, not 3 schools or 10 people talked at home, or 20 children interviewed. No, large scale big projects. We have enough people to do that.
Yeah. Okay, Nadia, I just have one question from you. When it comes to the classroom setting, so what type of the promising evidence-based strategies do we need to consider while teaching to the students with diverse background? Because we are more emphasizing on teaching in our Pakistani context. So what are your views?
So, in context of diversity, when I say diversity is, it should be seen as a positive aspect. if a classroom has diverse background, use this as an opportunity to bring that cultural capital that each group talks about. If it's a rural group, then bring that knowledge from the rural part of your classroom, the rural groups, and ask them to share their challenges, ask them to share their experiences. So I would say, in terms of teaching, yes, there should be one specific curriculum, one standard teaching process, but in order to overcome the learning demands of different groups, we have to adjust for that group. For example, let's say you have some students from background who cannot understand English or who cannot understand Urdu. What can we do to support their learning? So having an additional class for them will not be a problem. So I think investment in supporting learning needs, in supporting extra provision for children coming from diverse backgrounds, I think that should be addressed, but not that it should be addressed at the behest of your main teaching challenge or main teaching style. So if everybody is in the class and there is a lecture or there is one program or an experiment in the lab, then everybody will take part in it. There shouldn't be any discrimination. But for example, there are some children who are struggling, then there should be an extra support for them. Extra teaching assistance is an excellent intervention, and that has been found very helpful in boosting children's learning outcomes. And I think there should be some experiment done in Pakistan as well. In We see that teaching is such a challenging thing in Pakistan. Almost no support given to school teachers, no assistance. And I think if it can create market for more people to come in school, and it can create more job resources. But I think that can be another way to move forward towards it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Nathia, for sharing your nice views about your wonderful research and for giving us your time. So, this is the last moment. I'm just requesting the participants, if you have any question, just share in the chat box, or you can send me through my email and I can forward it to Dr. Nadia and she can respond and then I can share with you. So, Dr. Nadia, would you please mind to share about your next session in the next week, and then we can just wrap up.
Yes, so next session we'll talk about single national curriculum.
Yeah.
And then the following, this research that I'm doing with you, we have done this big survey in Pakistan about teacher recruitment and teacher mobility, and that's an issue. And we have got very interesting findings that what kind of teachers are changing jobs, what are the what are the motivating factors, or what are the challenges and what are the barriers that teachers still, despite having a very difficult circumstances in school, they still stay there while others make a decision to move. So, and this is in context of rationalization and e-transfer coming in Pakistan, that the government is regulating these transfers, and we have got some interesting findings with you to share. And the second one will be, we will talk about single national curriculum. I don't have any evidence on that, but I think it will be more like sharing opinion on what does it mean, what does single national curriculum mean in context of Pakistan. Can we make a single national curriculum, knowing that it is such a diverse country with so
Yeah.
much political way of looking into education. What does government want with this kind of national curriculum, and is it practical in our context or not? I think
Okay.
doing these kind of these little things, like managing teachers mobility, or and changing curriculum, or what medium of language we should use in class, these things are, they don't need investment. To be honest, they are not, the government doesn't have to pay money to the school system to do these things. So I think that what should government do is implement a policy that can that brings children out of school, children back into school, and stay there unless they complete at least 10 years of education. And that needs investment, that needs money given to school, incentivize school, incentivize teachers, incentivize parents, give them vouchers, give them food, give them some motivation to come back to school. So that is an expensive project. I think that is the government not doing. This e-transfer and they are not going to change the scenario. And this having national curriculum, single national curriculum, Urdu as a language or English as a language, this is bogus.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Nadia, once again. And thank you so much, participant, for joining this session. And I'm looking forward to meet you in next week for the second session of Dr. Nadia on single curriculum and the teacher mobility. So thank you. And Wasim, can we take a photograph?
I haven't midday. Yes, it has
Yeah.
a really positive impact on health and learning outcomes too. Yes, it has a very positive impact on attendance. It has a very positive impact on learning outcomes and health. It has really done very good work with India, but it needs a good infrastructure. In Finland is very attractive midday meal. I think in all developed countries, meal is provided. It sounds when I tell them that we don't get free meal in school, and people out there finds it very bizarre that that's not possible. How can children survive all day without eating anything? And as I oh no, we bring lunch boxes and then children have canteens, but then that costs money. So 1 day of money given for school canteen is, for some families, it is really challenging. And they provide, yes, exactly, this provision of transport or bus card is also a very positive intervention. It has been tested in America. There are randomized control trial evidence based on the effect of transport on teachers attendance and as well as student attendance. And in our countries where girls are not going to school because they don't feel safe during the journey from home to school, I think the government should provide safe, free transport facility to all girls. Anyways, and it not girls. I think it should be for girls and boys. Anyways, but specifically to encourage girls to go to school, attend school. At least transport can be provided free of cost. But again, these are the things that need money, and the government, our governments, do not invest in these interventions and in these programs. We are more concerned on things uh, which are not basically going to make any difference in the long run. Corruption is a, yeah, as soon as you roll out any program, but then monitoring, why can't they establish monitoring cell? Why can't they make it transparent? And why don't they, in India, midday meal was not implemented in 1 day. It was rolled out at very slow pace. So by regions and by states. So one state had it, and then the other state had it. So they slowly and gradually rolled out their midday meal program. Even now, many states are without this policy. So I think implementing something at a large scale is a failure. It's a recipe for failure. But at least they can start doing it at a small level, at a small scale, and test it, experiment it, and make things accountable. Do a proper accountability of these things rather than just leave it on local authorities or political members or member of parliaments. Number one, politicians should be taken out of these interventions. They shouldn't be. there should be 3-4 bodies to roll out an experiment, and the participation of government should be totally independent of it.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zafar. Thank you so much.